revealed the incredible hidden truth behind my brother's abuse, how it changed my life forever. Emily stood at the edge of the familiar park, the scent of grilled burgers and sweet corn wafting through the air. Laughter mingled with the chatter of neighbors, all gathered for the annual 4th of July barbecue. Her heart raced as she fixed her gaze on the community stage, where she was set to speak. She had so much to share, yet doubt clawed at her chest, whispering about her brother and the shadow he cast over every dream she dared to envision. As the youngest daughter of a proud veteran, family loyalty flowed through Emily's veins, but there was an invisible weight dangling from her shoulders, the burden of her brother's past abuse. Even as blue skies stretched above, her heart felt tangled in the dark webs of their shared history. Love and anger collided within her, a confusing web of emotions she couldn't untangle. It was just the kind of place where everyone was aware of each other's lives. Emily had always believed in family first, but her brother's struggles were like a haunting mystery, often dragging her down when she tried to rise above. Sometimes, during twilight moments on her back porch, she could almost convince herself that healing was within reach. Then Sarah arrived. The new school counselor, with her warm smile and genuine interest, had quickly become a breath of fresh air. Emily found comfort in sharing snippets of her world, the laughter and tears, the secrets that burdened her heart. As they sat on the swings one afternoon, the sun setting behind them, Sarah had gently challenged her, asking, "Is it fair for you to carry all that alone?" Genuine warmth radiated from Sarah, a connection that made Emily start to reconsider everything. The upcoming community speech loomed ahead like a beacon of light, a chance to share her journey of endurance and hope. But the moment she felt excitement bubbling up inside her, the storm brewed in the background. A fierce argument with her brother threatened to derail everything she held dear. "Why can't you see how this is tearing us apart?" Emily shouted, adrenaline pumping through her veins. The shadows of his past erupted in a chaotic exchange that rattled their sanctity. Her brother exploded, revealing secrets buried deep within, layering their sibling bond with complicated truths she had never known. The revelation felt like a dagger to her heart, twisting in her chest as unspoken words echoed between them. Could she confront the painful memories while still carving a future she yearned for? The limits of forgiveness loomed heavily in her thoughts. Healing wasn't straightforward. It didn't come in a neat little package. She realized that her love for him didn't erase her need for justice. Her head spun, emotions colliding, and as she clutched her chest, she felt raw and exposed. Just then, amidst the chaos in her mind, she remembered her community. They were counting on her, waiting for her to step onto that stage. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. And as she stood before her audience, taking a deep breath, doubts swirled in her mind like tornado clouds. Would unveiling this hidden, painful truth be the key to uniting her family, or would it shatter the bonds they cherished? Emily's heart raced, gripping her speech like a lifeline, ready to brave the storm and find the path forward. Could she truly embrace her past while daring to hope for a brighter future? Emily took one last breath, the crisp air filling her lungs and tingling her fingertips. The applause from the crowd faded into a distant echo as she stepped onto the stage, her heart pounding like a drum. Faces looked up at her with anticipation. Neighbors, friends, and strangers filled the chairs, a supportive sea of familiar yet anxious expressions. "Thank you all for being here today," she began, her voice steady but soft, shaking just a little at the edges. The nerves threatened to swallow her whole, but she pressed on. "I stand before you not just to celebrate our independence, but to share a personal journey, one that is challenging but necessary, to expose truths that have lingered too long in silence." With every word, she felt a flicker of empowerment igniting inside her. She scanned the crowd, Her eyes landed on Sarah, who nodded encouragingly with a warm smile. That small gesture anchored her. Emily gripped the podium tighter, finding solace in the steady wooden surface beneath her hands. Growing up in a family bound by loyalty, she continued, there's a love that runs deep. And yet, there's also darkness. The immediate shift in the air was palpable. A cautious hush fell as whispers of concern echoed through the rustle of summer leaves. Many of you know my brother, she said, her voice trembling but resolute. She paused, the silence stretching out, a taut string ready to snap. What people don't see are the invisible scars. Hurting people that hurt people. He carries a pain from the past that often spills into our present, and my heart aches for him, but I can't ignore the hurt inflicted on myself, on our family. Swallowing hard, tears pricked the corners of her eyes. Raw emotions seeped through her words. When I was young, I watched him suffer. For years, I felt his rage and helplessness circle like vultures around my spirit, and I feared his anger.
Today I finally dare to peel back the layers of our history, because healing cannot start in the shadow of secrets. The crowd was still now, holding their breath as she revealed. He once said, "Don't tell anyone. No one will believe you." And I carried that weight with me, like a backpack filled with stone. But it's time for me to say no more. We deserve to breathe free from the chains of silence. Her voice grew stronger, buoyed by the honesty spilling from her heart. We can break the cycle of pain. We are worth the fight, and love can coexist with truth. A soft murmur of encouragement rippled through the audience. But just as relief began to wash over her, she spotted her brother at the back of the crowd, his expression a mixture of surprise and anger. It hit her like a tidal wave. What would he do now? Would this moment unite them, or deepen the rift that had already formed? The clock was ticking down for her speech. She could either finish strong or falter and retreat back into the shadows. Emily steadied herself, locking her gaze with his. In that split second, she realized that this moment wasn't just about navigating the past. It was a step toward a possible future. "I believe we can heal," she whispered finally. "I believe we can find our way back to each other, even through the pain." How would her brother react to this unmasking of their truth? Would he lash out in anger, or could he see the love behind her words? As she stepped back from the podium, adrenaline coursing through her, a hush fell over the crowd. All eyes were on her brother as she awaited his response, heart racing with both hope and fear. What would happen next? The silence was surreal. Emily's heart thudded in her chest as every eye in the crowd shifted to her brother. The weight of the moment pressed heavily on her shoulders, anticipation swirling around her like a thick fog. She had cast the net wide, revealing a truth that altered the ground beneath them. Now a wave of uncertainty rolled in. What would he say? For a heartbeat, he stood frozen, mouth slightly agape, his expression unreadable. Was it disbelief? Fury? Anxious whispers flitted through the crowd, each one a reminder of the stakes hanging around her. Her stomach churned as fear danced like flames in her veins. Would the warmth from his childhood memories break through the tension, or had they been extinguished forever? "Emily," he finally breathed, taking a cautious step forward. His voice was a low rumble, charged with an emotion she couldn't place. For a moment, it felt like a lifetime. She could see his knuckles whiten as he clenched his fists by his sides. "Please," Emily murmured, her voice trembling now. "Just let me explain." The crowd leaned in, their collective breath held tight. "Do you know what you've just done?" he asked, his voice quieter, almost stunned. "You've dragged everything into the light. You think that changes anything? You think that somehow makes it better?"
Frustration surged through her. It doesn't change the past, but it can change our future. I can't keep pretending. Pretending? His voice was sharp, cutting through the air. This isn't a game, Emily. You don't get to just upend everything and force people to face what they're not ready to see. Then when are we going to be ready? She shot back, anger flaring. Living in the shadows has hurt us both. Their eyes locked, and in that moment, the intensity of their history filled the space between them. She wanted to reach for him, to pull him into a hug that might heal everything. But an invisible barrier stretched tight and unyielding.
Family means protecting each other, he said, his voice almost a whisper now. You should have kept your mouth shut. You don't know what it was like. You don't know what I went through. The rawness in his tone was both a plea and an accusation, leaving Emily momentarily stunned. A voice from the crowd broke through, soft yet powerful. We're here for you both. It was Sarah, stepping forward. Emily just wants to heal. Can't you see that? But his gaze remained locked onto Emily, searching. She felt vulnerable and exposed, but also fiercely determined. Beneath that anger, she saw pain, deep-rooted scars that mirrored her own. Maybe I don't know everything, she admitted, her voice small yet steady. But I do know I don't want to fight anymore. I want a chance, for both of us. His expression softened for just a moment, a flicker of uncertainty. And what if I am not ready to forgive? Tears stung her eyes, but the fight in her flared hot as she said, Then let's figure it out together. We can't keep hiding. We owe it to ourselves. We owe it to our family. The crowd held its breath again, the urgency turning electric. Could they bridge this vast chasm that had been the backdrop of their lives, or was it too late? As she finished speaking, a murmur of agreement rippled through the audience, punctuated by soft cries of support. But Emily's gaze never left her brother's face. His next words would change everything. I don't know, he began slowly, the battle within his expression evident. But maybe I want to try, but it won't be easy. Her heart soared, but she knew this was just the first step. They had a long, uncertain road ahead. Then let's start the journey, she said, hope igniting within. We'll take it one step at a time. As the crowd started to applaud softly, something began to shift in the air. But before she could fully grasp the possibility that lay ahead, she noticed a scowl forming on someone else's face, not just her brother's. There, amid the crowd, shadows darkened in the corners of familiar faces. Who else harbored silent struggles, and what other truths were waiting in the darkness? The fight for healing had just begun, and with it, deeper revelations hovered on the horizon. Emily's heart raced as she scanned the crowd, her breath hitching in her throat.
An electric tension surged in the air, magnified by the sight of her brother's face. As he stood there, caught between anger and vulnerability, she sensed that this moment was pivotal, not just for them, but for everyone present. Suddenly, the crowd parted slightly, and an imposing figure emerged, eyes locked on her brother. It was Mark, their estranged cousin, who had always relished chaos. His expression blended skepticism with something darker, a challenge hidden behind a mask of indifference. "What's this? A therapy session in public?" Mark's voice sliced through the atmosphere, abrasive and mocking. "You think you can just drag everyone along for your little walk down memory lane? We've all moved on." The crowd's murmur shifted, a mix of discomfort and curiosity. Emily's stomach twisted. She couldn't let Mark derail everything. "It's not about moving on," she shot back, her voice steady despite the growing storm inside her. "It's about facing what we've been through, together." Mark stepped closer, eyes narrowing. "You mean digging up the past? Look around you, Emily. Not everyone wants to unearth that. Keep the skeletons where they belong." "Maybe they don't want to face them, but that doesn't mean they don't exist. Running doesn't make them disappear," she countered, a fire igniting within her. Emily's brother shifted, seemingly caught between siding with her or his growing anger toward Mark. It was clear that he was wrestling with a choice, maybe to stand up for her, or maybe to retreat back into the safety of silence. Mark raised his hands, a mix of frustration and amusement. "You two think you can fix everything with a few heartfelt speeches? This isn't a fairy tale. The past is messy, Emily. It's ugly, and you pulling everyone into the spotlight just brings out the worst." For a moment, the crowd held its breath again, caught in Mark's theatrical challenge. Emily could see faces soften and harden, reflected uncertainty lurking in their eyes. The stakes were growing higher, and she had to reclaim the narrative. "You're right. The past is ugly." She took a step toward Mark. "But burying it only perpetuates the pain. We need to confront it, so we don't keep passing it down." Silence cloaked the crowd as her words hung heavy in the air. Emily's brother glanced at her, hope fluttering in his eyes, as he seemed to reconsider Mark's words in light of her conviction. Mark scoffed, but something flickered beneath his bravado. You think confronting the past means facing it head-on in front of everybody? What happens when people start pointing fingers? You can't control the fallout. I don't, Emily started, but Mark cut her off, his voice sharp. Let's be real here. The truth can tear people apart, Emily. Sometimes it's just better to let it lie. Cold dread wrapped around her heart. Was he right? What if digging into the past only laid bare more wounds than they were ready to handle? The vulnerability of the moment gripped her.
They stood on this fragile precipice, a chance to heal or a path to fracture. A woman in the back spoke up, barely above a whisper. We deserve to be free of this burden. Others echoed her sentiments softly, but Mark shook his head. Don't listen to her, people. You really think digging it up will give you peace? The internal battle brewed inside Emily. Should she push harder or retreat, forging a different path? Could she pull more people into this moment without it exploding into chaos? And just then, another familiar face emerged from the crowd, almost hidden among the throngs. It was Lucy, Emily's childhood friend, cradling her own secrets, her gaze uncertain yet searching. What could be waiting just beneath the surface for her to uncover? With every eye on her, Emily realized that this was no longer just about her and her brother. The truth was larger than them both, and it was time to reveal it, no matter the cost. Mark, if you think I'm going to back down now, you're wrong. I want everyone to see what's been hidden, not just our family, but I can't do it alone. The crowd shifted again, a palpable energy charged with confrontation and possibility. As Emily sought her brother's gaze, she could tell he was contemplating those words. But what awaited them if they chose this path? Would the truth finally set them free, or would it only unravel everything? The tension hung thick in the air as Emily locked eyes with her brother. She felt a flicker of hope that he might finally see what she saw. The truth could draw them together or tear them apart, but the choice was no longer solely hers. With the crowd's attention ignited, she took a deep breath, her heart pounding in her chest. Everyone's been hurt, she called out, her voice rising with passion. This darkness, it affects us, not just as individuals, but as a family. It's stifling us, and we can't move forward until we talk about it. She watched as her brother's features shifted, his fists clenched, and then relaxed, a mix of fear and understanding in his expression. Emily, he began, but Mark cut in, raising a hand triumphantly. Let's be real here, he sneered. You're asking for a confession from people who are scared to admit they've made mistakes. You think this will end well? Not if we don't try. Emily felt a surge of determination. We can't heal what we don't face. Don't you feel that? The weight of it all? A murmur rippled through the crowd as others began to share wary glances of solidarity. A small wave of murmurs began as one person after another voiced their agreement. Freedom requires honesty, Lucy chimed in, stepping forward. I've been carrying this weight with me too. It's exhausting. Emily's heart ached with gratitude. Lucy had always been brave, balancing tribulations like they were feathers. She turned to her, grateful their bond had survived the years. Mark shook his head, clearly agitated. You think you're the voice of reason?
All you're doing is tearing everyone apart. You have no idea how low this can go. Maybe the truth is the only way to rise up again, Emily shot back, desperation creeping into her voice. I'm not afraid of the fallout. I just want us to live. It's time to let go of the shame. The crowd was shifting, more people stepping forward, captivated by her conviction. A sense of camaraderie was blossoming, gelling them in shared pain. It was palpable. They all felt it. Speak up if you feel something, one voice shouted, emboldened. Faces of support began to appear. The weight of secrets felt lighter suddenly, like ballast easing from a ship. Together they stood. The tension transformed from a weapon into a vessel for connection. Emily leaned back, feeling a sense of power coursing through the moment. See, she urged her brother, her voice softer. We can't let the past keep us silent. This is our chance. Do you believe that? He asked, searching her eyes. You really think this will help? I have to believe it, she replied, her voice trembling. If we don't face this together, we'll always be haunted. We deserve peace. There was a flicker in his expression, something fragile but radiant, like sunlight breaking through heavy clouds, and for an instant she thought he might finally understand. Mark, who had been watching the moment unfold with disdain, scoffed. "So you're prepared for the truth to backfire? You really want to gamble?" "I'd rather take that gamble than live this lie," Emily asserted, a knot of courage tightening in her chest. "I want to stand for the truth for those who can't." As murmurs crescendoed into a chorus of agreement around her, she could feel the collective heartbeat of a crowd. They could face the shadows together. The past was no longer just hers. But Mark's eyes darkened, and as he took a step back, Emily felt the choreography of chaos shift again. "Careful, Emily," he warned, a new edge to his voice. "What if the truth isn't what you think it is?" Cold fear crept back in. A ripple of uncertainty washed over her. Could she really handle whatever lay beneath the surface? The stakes had just ramped up, and Emily knew they were about to unravel something monumental. As the shadows flickered beneath the tension, a seed of doubt bloomed. Was she prepared for the turmoil ahead? What secrets would come to light if they opened those floodgates? Would they find healing, or would the power of the truth drive them further apart? Emily's pulse quickened as Mark's words sank in. What did that even mean? The air felt electric, thick with possibility and dread. She could see fragments of worry playing across the faces in the crowd, those same faces that moments ago had swelled with hope. Her brother stepped back further, arms crossed tightly over his chest. "You think this is about healing?" he asked, his voice a low growl. "It's about drawing blood, Emily. You want to tear open old wounds?"
Fine, but don't think you'll be able to stitch them together again. Sometimes it gets worse before it gets better, Emily replied, her own voice surprising her with its steadiness. But not talking about it is what keeps the wounds infected. I refuse to bury it anymore. Around her, the murmurs grew, some in agreement, others in disagreement. As if they were caught in a tug of war, Lucy squeezed Emily's hand, grounding her. "Hey everyone," Lucy called out, breaking through the turmoil. "If we're attacking the truth, then let's not forget what we've been through together. We don't have to stay silent. We don't need to hide." An older woman, someone Emily recognized from childhood, stepped closer. "I lost my son to this darkness," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "He never spoke up. I wish he had. Maybe he'd still be here." Emily's heart twisted at that. The bravery in sharing so painful a truth filled the space with a weight she hadn't expected. It was a reminder of the stakes. The darkness had so many shadows. Mark turned his gaze from Emily to the woman, conflicted. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but words failed him. Instead, he drummed his fingers against his arms as tension crackled between them. "Emily, you don't know what you're asking for," he finally said, throwing down the gauntlet. "You think everyone here is safe? They might not want to dig as deep as you are. You really think everyone's prepared for the truth?" A chorus of yeses rose from the crowd, affirming her. Emily felt her brother's resolve falter, the uncertainty creeping into his expression, but it didn't last long. "Fine," he said, his voice steely. "Let's have it then. Let's expose our dirty laundry. But remember, some stains never come out. You open this can, you might not like what you find." As the tension in the air thickened, Emily stood firm. "I'm not afraid. I'm ready for whatever comes." But was she really? Her heart raced, another shadow of doubt creeping in. She sensed the crowd leaning in, their emotions swirling from conviction to uncertainty, creating a whirlwind of anxiety. Mark took a step closer, the veins bulging in his neck. "What you're asking for, Emily, might cost us everything. You think you can handle that? I won't stand for being haunted anymore. We can't just wake up from this nightmare without shining a light on it." She looked at him, hoping he could see her desire for healing. With a resigned expression, he stepped back again, folding into the shadows, becoming a part of the crowd rather than an ally. "It's your funeral," he grumbled. Emily felt her spine straightened. She turned to the crowd and asked, "Who else is ready to confront the truth?" Cheers rose among the people, emboldened by a combination of Emily's passion and their own concealed fears. The floodgates were beginning to creak open. But deep in her gut, a question burrowed. Did she truly have the strength to face the truth, no matter how ugly it might be? What if the revelations were more than anyone could bear? As the atmosphere electrified, anticipation surged, and Emily understood that the moment they stepped into the truth, there would be no going back. With a deep breath, she called out again, "Let's do this as a family. Let's face our demons together." And as the echoes of her voice faded, a chill ran down her spine. What awaited them on the other side of this wall of silence?
Was she ready to uncover truths that could shake their very foundations? The crowd fell silent, a heavy stillness enveloping them like a thick fog. Emily searched their faces, hoping for reassurance, but finding only uncertainty. The stakes had grown impossibly high, and a thin thread of fear wound itself around her heart. "Okay," she said, her voice breaking the quiet. "Let's start with our own stories. Who wants to go first?" Emily's question hung in the air, floating like a whisper that begged for willing ears. She remembered the woman's earlier revelation, the raw pain and vulnerability, the kind that pulled at her insides. It was that same kind of courage she hoped would blossom here tonight. Several moments passed, stretching like rubber. Then a hand shot up in the back. It was a young man, his face familiar but distant. "All right, I'll go," he said, his voice shaky but resolute. "I never told anyone, not even my parents, but I was bullied in school every single day. They called me names, pushed me around. I felt so alone." As he spoke, the tension that had been thick in the air lightened just a bit. More hands began to rise, one after the other, as stories spilled forth, each voice a thread weaving a complex tapestry of hurt and healing. There was anger over rejected love, grief over lost friends, and the haunting shadows of abusive relationships. Emily's heart swelled with empathy as she listened, each confession stirring something deep within her. As others found their voices, she found herself becoming more aware of her own truths, the ones she was desperate to confront. I had a different experience," Emily finally said, feeling her breath hitch as all eyes turned to her. "I thought I was strong for so long, but I was just burying everything. I grew up with a brother who was always angry. I thought if I smoothed things over or stayed quiet, it would all just get better. But," her voice faltered, heavy with gravity, "it only pushed me away from myself." Gasps echoed in the crowd, but Emily pressed on, determination filling her. "For years, I let the darkness fester inside of me, hoping the light would somehow break through. But it didn't, until I realized we need to face our pasts to move forward." Her words hung in the air, ricocheting against startled hearts. Silence reigned for a heartbeat, then Lucy took a step forward. "You're not alone, Emily."
So many of us hid away from our truth. It hurts, but facing it means we reclaim our stories. The crowd surged with fervor, sharing more and more. Each voice built upon the last until the room thrummed with emotion. Emily felt something shift within herself, a flicker of hope igniting. Maybe this was what healing looked like. Maybe they could piece together their brokenness and emerge whole from the ordeal. But just as the energy surged, a sudden chill swept through the air. Mark stepped forward, his brow drawn tight with frustration. "You think you've found a solution?" he challenged, voice tremulous with anger. "You're opening old scars and expecting to heal overnight. It doesn't work that way." "Then how does it work?" Emily shot back, her lips trembling. "Hiding what happened to us? Pretending it doesn't exist?" Mark's eyes narrowed. "You might be strong enough to carry it, but I don't know about the rest of us. You don't get how deep these wounds go." And suddenly, a new layer of tension filled the void, the kind thick enough to choke on. It collided with the hope they just kindled, threatening to snuff it out entirely. Emily stood rooted, heart racing, caught between their fiery response and the need for unity. Could she help everyone see that confronting their pasts was the only way forward? Her voice trembled slightly as she spoke again. "We need this. The darkness doesn't just go away because we ignore it." But as she spoke, doubt crept back. Was she strong enough to face the consequences of opening this Pandora's box? If the wounds were deeper than she imagined, who would be left to cover them? Suddenly she took a step back, the reality of what lay ahead tightening its grip around her. In the crashing tide of emotions, she wondered, what if the truths they uncovered were more painful than any of them anticipated? Would they be brave enough to weather the storm together? The crowd held its breath, and Emily sensed that right then, the true test of their strength was about to begin. The tension thickened, wrapping around Emily like a vice. Her hands trembled at her sides, and she could feel the weight of countless stares digging into her soul. The fear was palpable. Would they turn on her? Would they back away, unable to confront their own scars? Mark's face was a storm of emotions, anger flaring in his eyes. "You don't understand," he shouted, his voice echoing against the walls.
This isn't just a game where we reveal secrets and grow stronger. Some of us are suffocating beneath the weight of our pain. At his words, the crowd shifted nervously, and Emily's heart sank. She had hoped to ignite a spark of healing, but instead she felt it flicker. I know it's hard, Mark, but isn't the pain of silence even harder? Her voice, though steady, trembled with the truth that was finally clawing its way to the surface. An older woman, her brow lined with worry, stepped forward. I lost my husband last year, and I completely shut down.
I didn't know how to deal with that loss. Right now, I feel like I can finally breathe, but I still don't want to dig into the memories. Her voice cracked and tears glistened in her eyes. What if those memories take me back to a darkness I don't want to revisit? Emily's heart ached for her. It's okay to be scared. It's okay to take your time. But if we don't start facing our pain, we risk holding it inside forever. That can feel much worse. As the words flowed, something shifted in the crowd. The energy, though tense, crackled with a raw, vulnerable energy that seemed to hang in the air, waiting for someone to seize it. I think the point is, a man interjected, speaking slowly as if he were carefully processing each word, that we can't deal with this alone. If someone here can face a truth, it might give the rest of us the courage to face ours. A murmur of agreement rippled through the group. Emily's heart lifted slightly. They were shifting. Maybe they were ready. Another young voice broke through the quiet. It was Sarah, someone Emily had seen at the community meetings but never really spoken to. I was in an abusive relationship a few years ago, Sarah stammered, her words catching on the deep breaths she took. It took me years to let someone love me again. I still have bad dreams and I wake up terrified. It feels like a prison. I'm filled with shame for not being able to let go. The crowd softened, expressions shifting from defensiveness to raw compassion. You're brave, Sarah, someone called out from the corner. Just sharing that takes courage. Emily felt hope blooming again. We're starting to share our truths, and that's huge. Each voice makes it easier for the next. We've been carrying this alone for too long. She drew a deep breath, grounding herself. So, what if we were to be brave together? Share what we thought would crush us, and lean on one another as we carry it. Mark looked around, the anger simmering in his expression replaced by something softer. Disbelief? Confusion? It just feels like we could be setting ourselves up to fall, he murmured. Or we could be setting ourselves free, Lucy interjected, her voice steady and clear. But we can't do it without each other. A silence spread through the group, heavy, pregnant with possibility. Emily felt the air change, lifting the weight even just a little. What if we make a pact? If someone shares, we all support them. No judgment. Just holding space for each other. One by one, heads slowly nodded in agreement. Emily felt her heart begin to quicken, as she realized this wasn't just about her anymore. This was about all of them, this collective fight to heal. The flicker of hope she'd felt earlier flared anew. Could they really face the darkness together? Would this be the moment they turned right into the storm holding hands?
And then, for a heartbeat, it was as if the room held its breath, waiting for the first brave soul to take the leap into shared vulnerability. Would it be Emily, or would it be someone else with a secret they had yet to unearth? As the silence stretched, Emily felt the weight of answered questions pressing down on them. Facing the storm together was no small feat. But in that moment, Emily knew one thing for certain. Whatever was shared next would take them all deeper into the heart of their pain. And she couldn't help but wonder, would they find the light on the other side? The stillness in the room was electric, pregnant with anticipation. Emily could feel the collective heartbeat of everyone present, almost like a drum echoing the emotions they all desperately wanted to explore. She scanned the faces around her, searching for the one who would finally break the silence, but it was as if they were all waiting for a sign, a signal that it was indeed safe to dive into the depths of their pain. What if it's me, she thought, her heart hammering against her ribs. Her mind raced with fears and doubts. What if her truth was too much for them? What if it chased them away instead of drawing them closer? But then she remembered Sarah, Mark, the brave woman who had lost her husband. Each had found a flicker of strength by voicing their pain. Maybe it was worth it. Before she could second-guess herself, Emily took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of the crowd's energy. "I'll go," she heard herself say, her voice firm yet quavering. "I'll speak first." The hush that followed felt heavier than ever, as if the room itself was straining to listen. "I don't know if this is what you all were expecting," she began, her pulse quickening, "but I've lived with abuse too." The words escaped her, raw and unfiltered, and she felt the heaviness in the air shift slightly. Several breaths were held in the crowd, and Emily could see Mark's expression soften further, his earlier anger replaced with empathy. She continued, her words gaining momentum. "The shame and the anger mixed with all the hurt. I started believing it was my fault. I buried it deep, thinking that if I didn't talk about it, then maybe it would just go away." The older woman who had spoken earlier reached out, squeezing her hand in encouragement, and Emily's words became a flood. "But it didn't go away. It followed me. It affected my relationships with my family, my friends. I felt like I was living in a shadow. I was terrified of being vulnerable, thinking it would lead to rejection. I wanted to heal, but I had no idea how."
Suddenly, a surge of energy swept through the crowd as others began to lean in, drawn by her honesty. Something beautiful shifted in the air, an openness, a hunger for shared stories. Mark cleared his throat. "I thought I was alone in this too," he finally admitted, his voice quieter but more steady than before. "I didn't realize how many of us have felt just lost. There was a time when I thought sharing my story was a weakness, but hearing you, Emily, it makes me realize I might have been wrong about that." "Yes, maybe we can turn our pain into strength," Sarah chimed in, her cheeks flushed. "I felt so trapped, hiding in my shame. But hearing you all, it's liberating. I think we can push back against it together." Each voice sparked another. The stories flowed like a river, turning what once felt like shame into a newfound strength that washed over the room. The heaviness was slowly replaced with resolve, a shared promise to confront their scars, not hide from them. Watching it unfold filled Emily with awe. Each person who spoke brought light to the collective shadow, revealing that the darkness was less daunting when shared. Emily couldn't help but wonder, were they really on the verge of something transformative? Could they find hope in the stories yet to emerge? Just as the atmosphere began to shift towards something brighter, a figure stepped shyly into the circle. It was someone she hadn't expected. "I need to speak too," he whispered, his voice trembling with a mix of fear and determination. Emily felt her breath catch. What would he reveal? Would they be ready for it? And just how connected would their threads of vulnerability intertwine in this moment? The young man stepped forward, shifting nervously. With each breath, he gathered the strength to continue. "My name is Jake," he said, eyes darting around to find familiar faces in the crowd. Emily felt her heart race. His nervousness mirrored hers, but something deeper stirred within her that urged her to lean closer, to offer support and understanding. She could see others doing the same, faces lighting up with encouragement. "I lost my father to addiction," Jake confessed, voice trembling as he stared into the distance. He wasn't just angry. There were times I felt like I was growing up in a war zone, tiptoeing around his broken promises. The crowd shifted again, a gasp echoing from somewhere in the back. Emily felt the air thicken with the weight of shared pain, a palpable bond forming among them. "My mom tried her best," he continued, tears pooling in her eyes. "But looking back, I saw how much of her strength was consumed by sadness. All I wanted was to help her, but I didn't know how." The anguish in his voice was almost tangible, and Emily felt tears prick at her own eyes. "But when he passed, it tore a hole in my heart. Instead of moving forward, I sank into despair. I blamed myself for not saving him, for not being enough. It kept me silent for so long." As he spoke, he slowly lifted his chin, the strength within him visibly blooming. "But listening to all of you, sharing our truths, maybe, just maybe, I can stop hiding behind that pain," he said, his voice growing steadier with each word. "I want to break the cycle, just like everyone else here." A wave of empathy rippled through the crowd, and Emily felt the connection deepening. She wanted to reach out to Jake, to let him know that he wasn't alone, that they were all in this together. That's when her brother stepped forward, shaking as he took a deep breath. "I've been listening to all of you," he said, his voice strangely soft. "And I realize I've contributed to the darkness too. I didn't mean to hurt anyone, especially you, Em." His gaze flickered across the sea of faces, but there was vulnerability in his eyes now, a glimmer of recognition. "I thought I could shield everyone from my rage, but it only brought more hurt. I can't bury it any longer either." The crowd was hushed, the anticipation brimming with possibility. Emily's heart soared, her hopes lifting like the sun breaking through clouds. "Do you really want to heal?" she asked, her voice breaking. He nodded slowly. "I want to find a way to mend what we've lost.
Maybe it starts by facing it, together. Tears streamed down Emily's cheeks as she felt a wave of warmth wash over her. This was it. This collective truth-telling held power, a strength she never thought possible. They were unveiling their scars, and what was unfolding felt like the dawn after an incessant night. Taking another step towards her brother, she extended her hand, reaching through the invisible barrier that had once separated them. Together, we can face this, but we have to promise to lean on one another, to allow ourselves to be vulnerable. More voices chimed in, echoes of agreement swirling around the room. The tenderness growing in the air was palpable, bonding them through shared pain, threaded through understanding. They stood united, shaking off the weight of secrecy that had clung to them far too long. From here, we'll heal. The crowd nodded in unison, a commitment echoing. Each shared story brought light, melting away the walls that had been built over years. As they embraced their truths, Emily felt empowered by the connections they'd forged. They weren't just breaking down barriers, they were creating a new foundation, in their family, in their friendships, in their community. At last, hope glittered like stars above a darkened sky. Maybe this time, they would break free from the chains of the past, enabling each other to step into a brighter future. And as she looked around at her brother, Jake, and the multitude of kindred souls gathered together, Emily felt a warmth swell within her chest. This was the moment they would carry forth, the moment they began to rewrite their stories for good.
"Let this be our starting point," she said, her voice steady as the tension finally began to dissipate. "Together, we'll turn our pain into strength." The crowd surged with renewed energy, voices lifted in agreement, an atmosphere familiar yet different. A shared sense of unity radiated hope. As they stood there, hand in hand, Emily understood this journey was just beginning, yet it felt powerful and filled with promise. Now it was time to move forward. Before she could even ponder the uncertainty or fear still hidden in her heart, a rush of voices blended into one. "Let's do this," they shouted, determination blazing in their eyes. The transformation was underway. So this is the moment. Let's embrace it, moving toward the brilliant dawn. Now more than ever, it was time to make noise and share their stories. Each whisper, each shout brought them closer to healing. Everyone was finally ready to face the waves together. Together forever, she thought with conviction. It was their time. Now it was time for you to take action. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss out on the next exclusive stories that uplift and inspire. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support for these heartfelt transformations. Comment below with your reactions and feelings about this powerful ending. Your voice matters, and we want to hear it. And most importantly, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Don't wait not even one more second to share the light. True fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.